Part 1. The Ship of Theseus, the Origin of the Paradox. Have you ever wondered what makes something the same over time? How can we truly say that an object, person, or idea is unchanged? What if it's not the physical parts that make up its identity? What if identity is something deeper, something more abstract? The Ship of Theseus is one of the oldest thought experiments that confronts this question. Imagine a ship sailing through the ocean, carrying a captain and a crew. Over time, every part of the ship is replaced. The planks, the sails, the masts. Piece by piece, the ship is repaired until none of the original materials remain. But does this gradual replacement change the ship's identity? Is it still the same ship? This paradox is a direct challenge to our understanding of identity and continuity. It was first posed by the Greek philosopher Plutarch over 2,000 years ago. He wrote about a ship belonging to the legendary Greek hero Theseus, which, over time, was continuously repaired. The challenge arises when the ship, now entirely made of new parts, is compared to another ship, one made from the original parts which have been replaced. Which ship, then, is the true Ship of Theseus? Part 2. The Early Philosophers, Exploring Continuity of Identity. As you dive into this paradox, one of the first questions that arises is, what does it mean for something to remain the same? Let's go back to the time of ancient philosophy, where thinkers like Heraclitus and Parmenides set the stage for the future of identity debates. Heraclitus famously said, "You cannot step into the same river twice." According to him, everything is in a constant state of flux, even if we perceive things as constant. Just as the water in a river is always flowing and changing, so is everything in the universe, including the Ship of Theseus. Every part of the ship is replaced, and while it may still look like the same ship to the human eye, is it? Heraclitus would say, no, the ship is not the same. In contrast, Parmenides believed in a more rigid understanding of identity, claiming that change is an illusion. For him, true reality is static and unchanging. Under this worldview, the Ship of Theseus could never truly change. It is always the same ship, regardless of how many parts are replaced. But these are just the ancient beginnings of this question. Let's look at how later philosophers and thinkers, including John Locke and Immanuel Kant, interpreted the Ship of Theseus Paradox. Part 3. John Locke, Identity and Continuity of Consciousness. In the 17th century, the philosopher John Locke revolutionized our understanding of personal identity with his theory of continuity of consciousness. According to Locke, identity is not tied to the body, but to the mind. Locke argued that as long as a person's consciousness persists, meaning that their memories, experiences, and awareness remain intact, the person is still the same, even if their physical body changes. Now, let's apply Locke's ideas to the Ship of Theseus. For Locke, the ship's identity would be based on the continuity of its function. If the ship continues to serve as a vessel to sail the seas and fulfill its purpose, it doesn't matter that its parts have been replaced. The ship is still the same ship. The function is what makes it continuous, not the individual materials that make it up. Locke would say that the Ship of Theseus maintains its identity because its purpose, its function hasn't changed. In his view, identity is a process, a continuity, not a static entity. So even if the ship is entirely new, its identity as the Ship of Theseus persists because it continues to serve the same purpose. However, Locke's theory doesn't go unchallenged. Let's look at the next philosopher, Immanuel Kant. Part 4. Immanuel Kant, the Role of Internal Relationships. Immanuel Kant, one of the most influential philosophers of the 18th century, took a completely different approach. Kant argued that identity isn't defined solely by the function or continuity of consciousness, but by the relationship of the parts to the whole. In Kant's view, identity isn't just about the persistence of function. It's about how the individual parts are organized and related to one another. If you replace all the parts of the ship, the internal structure and organization of the ship change, and thus its identity changes as well. The ship might still function as a vessel, but it no longer has the same organization of parts that it once did. Kant's theory is based on the idea that identity emerges from the interconnectedness of things. For Kant, the ship of Theseus, when all its parts are replaced, is no longer the same ship. It's a new ship, because the relationships between its parts have changed. What if this idea could apply to something more complex, like the human mind? Imagine you're undergoing surgery to replace organs one by one. Are you still the same person? According to Kant, if your internal relations, your body's interconnectedness, change, then your identity changes too, just like the ship. But this brings up a fascinating philosophical question. What is it that makes our identity stable over time? Part 5, Parfit's teletransportation and personal identity. Fast forward to the 20th century. Derek Parfit, a British philosopher, expanded on Locke's theory by introducing a thought experiment called teletransportation, which is akin to Star Trek's famous transporter. Imagine you step into a teletransportation device, which scans your body and then reconstructs an exact copy of you on the other side. The question is the person on the other side still you? For Parfit, identity isn't about physical continuity. What matters is the psychological continuity, the memories, experiences, and consciousness that make you you. So, if the person on the other side of the teleporter has the same memories, same experiences, and same consciousness as you, then they are still you. The physical body doesn't matter. When we apply this idea to the ship of Theseus, it raises an interesting point. Even though all the parts of the ship are replaced, if the ship's function and purpose remain the same, is it still the same ship? According to Parfit's ideas, if the ship's purpose and operation continue without disruption, it might still be considered the same ship, because the identity lies in the function, the consciousness of the ship, not its parts. Part 6, the role of time. Are we changing, or is time just an illusion? Now, let's consider the role of time in all of this. Time, after all, is an essential factor in the Ship of Theseus Paradox. If parts of the ship are replaced gradually, over a long period of time, does that change its identity? What if time itself is an illusion? Einstein's theory of relativity suggests that time is not absolute. It can bend and stretch depending on the observer's position. If time is not a constant, then perhaps our understanding of identity also bends and shifts based on our perspective. This idea leads us into the realm of quantum physics, where particles can exist in multiple states at once. In this world, nothing is truly fixed, and even the identity of an object, like a ship, can be in multiple states simultaneously. Could it be that, just as subatomic particles are constantly shifting, so too is the identity of the ship of Theseus, fluctuating in response to changes in the universe? Time, according to some interpretations of quantum mechanics, is not linear. Could the ship be both the same and different at the same time? Could the concept of identity itself be relative to time? Part 7. The simulation hypothesis. Is everything just code? And then there's the mind-bending simulation hypothesis. Proposed by philosopher Nick Bostrom in 2003, it suggests that we might be living in a highly advanced computer simulation. In this simulated reality, everything we see, feel, and experience could be nothing more than a series of code. If that's the case, then everything, every ship, every person, could be nothing more than lines of code, constantly updated and replaced. In a simulated universe, the Ship of Theseus Paradox might not even be a paradox at all. Perhaps in this simulation, things can change without ever losing their identity. Perhaps the very fabric of reality itself is a series of shifting codes, always in motion, always changing, yet always retaining the illusion of stability. Does the ship even exist as we perceive it, or is it just a highly advanced projection of reality? If we are indeed living in a simulation, then the Ship of Theseus Paradox might not be asking the right question. It might be suggesting that there is no true, underlying identity, only simulated continuity. Part 8. Conclusion. The future of identity. So where does this leave us? After centuries of debate, we still don't have a clear answer. Is the ship of Theseus the same ship if every part is replaced? Or are we simply witnessing an illusion of continuity? The truth is that the paradox raises more questions than it answers, but perhaps that's what makes it so compelling. The ship of Theseus challenges our understanding of identity, change, and continuity. It forces us to confront the nature of reality itself, whether we live in a universe governed by fixed laws or one that is constantly shifting, fluid, and uncertain. So what do you think? Is the ship the same, or is it something new? And more importantly, are we ever really the same person, or is change the only constant in life? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. This paradox has left philosophers and scientists puzzled for millennia, but I'd love to hear your perspective.